Well guys, it is patch day. Hooray! We got a surprise patch that included some balance changes. I know that has been a hot topic as of late. People felt like there were some balance changes that probably should have came with the expansion, but they brought them quickly after the expansion, where, you know, 2 weeks into the new meta, if you will, and they have decided to shake things up. And yeah, if you haven't seen them already, we're going to cover what the updates are. And they also gave us a new bundle, and I want to talk a bit about that as well. So let's take a look. Right out of the gate, we have Histgrove. Histgrove, as you can see with the highlight, is now 4 magicka. This is a big deal, and it's also not a big deal. It's interesting. Whether this thing costs, you know, 3 or 4 probably makes zero difference in terms of its late game playmaking ability, right? This thing didn't trigger until you had 15 max magicka, so you got a long time to put one of these, or multiples of these, into play and still get the effect. But the big deal is that it sort of acted like a poor man's tree minder when it was at 3. One of the things that specifically Ramp Scout was known for doing was this, you know, 357 opener, or 35X opener, if you will, where you play either Tree Minder or Histgrove on 3 to then play your Histmage on 5, and then hopefully the following turn something great for 7 or less, right? Like, you do those 2 early ramps to then, you know, get to the point where you can start playing your big efficient threats. Or if it's not like one big guy, then it might be like word wall, drain, or whatever it is. Like, you stabilize after the double ramp. It used to be even worse. So when Solitaire was 2, the 357 Nightmare opener used to be Tree Minder or Histgrove into Histmage, and then into Solitaire into the Histmage. So you like had this guaranteed ramp strategy while also dropping guards typically. But this moving to 4 means that if you do not have the Tree Minder, you have to wait to ramp. It's not necessarily a huge deal, but it is a pretty big deal in terms of trying to speed yourself to that 5 mark. Because 5, again, because of Histmage, was a really important spot to be at magicka-wise for Scout. So Histgrove costs 4 now. Northwind Outpost goes to 3. I feel a little sad by this, as somebody who has been playing charge decks for a long time. This clearly impacts me. It certainly impacts all the mono red aggressive decks. All of that being said, I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen sooner. At 2, I felt like Northwind Outpost was always hyper efficient. Here's the thing. So somebody mentioned to me on Twitter that they didn't think it was that big of a deal because it was rare that you were playing Outpost on 2 anyway. And you're right, but not all 100% all the way right. So sometimes if you didn't have a quality 2-drop, you would play Northwind Outpost if you knew that you were going to then play Raiding Party on turn 3, because then that makes a, you know, a 4/2 charge that you can split. So it wasn't like it never happened, but to me the real value of Northwind Outpost, as somebody who's played the charge archetype a lot, is actually on turn 4, or at least when you have 4 magicka available. So the ability to go, you know, like 2-drop into, you know, Raiding Party, and then on the next turn into another 2-drop plus Outpost. So if you think about something like in Charge Crusader, right? If you go 5th Legion Trainer into Raiding Party, right? Swing. And then the following turn you can then Orc Clan Captain and Outpost, or even like double Outpost, or whatever the case may be. The value of it being a 2 cost wasn't because you were playing it on curve necessarily, but you were playing it on curve in conjunction with other 2-drops on turn 4. It was like a giant power spike. This delays it for a bit. This also delays for a turn. When you get to 5 magicka, you could from hand, you know, Outpost and Raiding Party. This also very much so will affect Swindler's market style decks. Again, if you knew you were playing against opponents that were not likely running support removal, In the past, you could outpost on 2 and then mark it on 3. Now they are in the competing slots. So this one is a big deal. I think Northwind Outpost will probably still find home in some decks. It's just too efficient in the mono red stuff to not likely include it. But it is not going to be the auto include that it used to be, at least for right now. And it will certainly be interesting to see how much this hinders things like Swindler's Market, like Doomcrag Warrior, decks like that. Next up is Thieves Guild Recruit. Thieves Guild Recruit is changing the cost reduction. So now if you draw something that costs 7 or more, you reduce its cost by 1 instead of 2. I'm entirely fine with this. To be honest, at some point I wouldn't be shocked if they changed Thieves Guild Recruit to even be like a 1/1 with this ability, or just straight a 1/2 that draws a card. The cost reduction is kind of cool and flavorful. I'm gonna, like, inside I'm gonna hate a little bit that Lockpick still reduces by 2, but this only reduces by 1 because I think that the whole point was it was supposed to be, you know, the Thieves Guild Recruit is lockpicking and reducing the cost of the next card. But flavor complaints aside, I mean, it makes sense. This is clearly, I think, trying to target, you know, Scout and Unstoppable Rage, like Control Warrior. Also kind of impacts Control Monk. Not that you see it a lot, but it was there in the past, and I've seen it kind of re-popping up a bit. But the big ones are Rage and Scout. There's no more, you know, 7 cost Red Brahmins, or heaven forbid, like 6 or 5. Like, again, going back to the Histgrove thing, you know, that 3/5/7 opener, you know, if you had the ring and you could on turn 1 Thieves Guild Recruit, and then you get something discounted, and then go Treeminder, you know, Mage into discounted like Red Brahmin when, you know, he's going to be costing 7 or something, used to be pretty ridiculous. So now it's 1 less. Same thing with Rage. Rage used to be able to, between contracts and rings and whatever, used to be able to play it, you know, for 5 or 4 Magicka sometimes, which really helped the card, because anytime you get a discount on Unstoppable Rage, it increases the amount of things that you can play from hand, right, and play with Rage, so that your opponent doesn't have the ability to respond. This kind of changes the game in terms of the number of things that you can combo with Rage to do that. So, but these aren't it. As you can see, there's this arrow. So here is the rest. Thorn Histmage is now a 2/4. This one's actually a really big nerf. Back when they nerfed Thief of Dreams, I felt like that was an over nerf, because at the time I said it needed to be a 5/4 because it needed to trade with Thorn Histmage. Thorn Histmage, a lot of the power that came from that card came from 5 health. It survived Lightning Bolt. Several creatures couldn't trade into it and kill it right away. There's a lot of things that have 4 attack but do not have 5 attack. This now means that Thorn Histmage will get ran over by all of those cards with 4 attack. This is actually a really big deal in terms of power level for Thorn Histmage. That being said, it's not going to hurt the playability of the card. Every deck you were running Thorn Histmage in before, you're probably still wanting to run it in, with the exception of maybe some of the mid-range scouts. Like, that tells you how powerful Thorn Histmage was before. It's very clearly designed to be a ramp card, but just because of raw stats, like, you still ran it in mid-range and tempo scout builds. I don't think you do that now, because it's going to basically, you're paying 5 for a 3/4 guard plus the ramp. Not probably good enough in the mid-range stuff. Still exactly what you want to run in ramp strategies. So yeah, it is a big deal though, because even though you do still want to run it, it is not the safety net that it used to be, at least on first cast. And there's a lot of things that will be able to trade into this and survive. Case in point, things like Young Mammoth are all-stars now. Young Mammoth went from being an already great card to being a powerhouse if Scout remains in popularity, because it's a 3-drop that trades into Histmage and survives. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in a second as well, but that's a big deal. Next up we have Ulfric's House Karl. This is the nerf that I've been saying needed to happen for a long time. And that's just that it goes down to 3 health. It's a 3/3 now. I've been saying that it needed this because, quite frankly, it just needed to not survive Ice Storm. The fact that you could, play this on curve, usually draw 1 or 2 cards, and then if your opponent Ice Storms, this thing survived, and then likely triggered yet another draw when it attacked, was absolutely absurd. This card will still see play in every deck that was already playing it because they care more about the draw, but now they lose some of the additional board presence, so Ice Storm is slightly more relevant now. Yeah, the only other part I would have liked to have seen is have this brought in line with the other Nord effects so that, prophecies could interrupt before the card draw, but so far that has not been the case. It is just being changed to a 3/3, but again, this was a suggestion that I've been making for a long time. Last up is Unstoppable Rage. This moves to 8. On the one hand, not surprised at all. It's now the same cost as Dawn's Wrath, which I think is fine. It's a card with very similar effects to Dawn's Wrath, but unlike Dawn's Wrath, it requires setup, but also unlike Dawn's Wrath, there is the potential for a lot of upside, right? It's got a lower floor than Wrath and a higher ceiling. It is like the risk-reward cousin to Dawn's Wrath now. I think that's entirely fine, entirely the way that it should be. But the big thing for this is the number of things that now you can no longer like play Rage and said card from hand right away, right? So like Clockwork Dragon was starting to see some play because it was another giant drain creature, and you could play it from hand into the field lane plus Unstoppable Rage, and your opponent had no chance to respond. Now they need at least the ring, or they need some sort of discount like Thieves Guild Recruit, contracts, the ring, etc. But that's just not, a native thing that you can do now without some sort of ramping effect. So that has the potential to be a pretty big deal. I think that's the big one in terms of like things that cost 5 and that you were trying to play from hand. A lot of the things you were already playing were 4 or less, or more, and you were already ramping. Like Night Shadow, you already had to ramp if you were trying to pull that off anyway. Ravenous Hunger is still less. Moonlight Werebat is still less. It does delay it for another turn. Again, cost increase will do that, but I think the big loser here is Clockwork Dragon for Rage synergy. Now, I do want to talk about how I think this is going to change things, because you'll notice that these all basically target what are, affectionately referred to as the big 3 as of late, right? Ramp Scout, Aggro Crusader, and Rage Archer. But that's it. So, in my opinion, right now, Mage is in a great spot. It was already kind of on the rise. I think this just makes Mage, especially something like Support Mage, that much stronger. Other decks that I think are just immediately better just because of these nerfs, right? They indirectly rise in power level are mid-range Orcs, Orc Warrior. Great, right? Like, there's a number of things that Orcs are running that could, plow into Histmage now that couldn't before. You don't have to worry about Rage coming down sooner. You don't have to worry about Outpost, too much sooner and racing you. Like, mid-range Orc Warrior, I think, benefits. Sorcerer, that I've been playing a ton of, certainly benefits from all of these nerfs. Again, indirectly, just because Sorcerer was untouched, and I felt like Sorcerer was already at a really high power level. Just mid-range in general. Monk, Mage, etc., you name it. These were decks that were either control decks, that's what the Rage Archer was, late game decks like Ramp Scout, or hyper-aggressive decks. And if those all get nerfed, then the middle of the field just kind of inherently gets stronger. I expect there to be a fair amount of mid-range played. Also, Crusader still has pretty intense card draw. It's likely still going to be very strong as an aggressive deck, but specifically because of the nerf to Outpost, I would not be shocked if we don't see the pendulum swing back in favor of the more willpower-oriented token versions of Crusader, because they didn't necessarily care if House Karl, you know, was a 3/3 or a 3/4. I mean, certainly a 3/4 helped them, but they can still buff House Karl with Fervor if they do run it, with Ally and so forth. And if they were not running Northwind Outpost and they were the willpower-based ones, this doesn't affect them too much. So again, I wouldn't be shocked if, like, you know, willpower-heavy Token Crusader makes a comeback. Mid-range decks, Control Mage, Goblin Assassin, I think could see a pretty uptick in play, just because even though I don't think Crusader was hit too hard with this round of nerfs, there is that whole like psychological, oh, this deck is bad, so let me find something else. And so if you're looking for other aggressive decks to play, I think Goblin Assassin is pretty decent after the tools that it got from the expansion. Yeah, so lots of stuff. Can't wait to see how things shake out. I did also want to point out that we have a bundle. This is a pretty awesome bundle. You get 10 packs of Core, 10 packs of Skyrim, and alternate art cards. Now, it's kind of hard to see here, but this is alternate art Leaf Lurker, this is Alduin, and this is Master of Arms. Kind of hard to see here. I think the art is gorgeous for these. They're certainly gonna get my money because I'm a sucker for alternate art. I really like that Master of Arms is holding the Mace of Encumbrance and a Tome of Alteration. I think that's a very like cheeky include. But like, even if you don't care about the alternate art, 15 bucks for 20 packs is a pretty decent deal, right? Because, oh, whoops. I guess I didn't want that. If you go and you compare it just to like normal pack stuff, right? 15 packs is normally 20 bucks. So for 15 bucks you get 20 packs plus some extra stuff. Like, the value is there. So it's kind of nice to see that they're giving us, I don't know if you'd call it a Christmas bundle. I mean, they're calling it New Life Festival Pack. Now, I will say that this is also interesting because this makes me wonder if we're going to get anything for some sort of New Life Festival. I don't know if it'll be an event, maybe. I don't know if that's a reference to Elder Scrolls Online. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's interesting that they specifically call it the New Life Festival Pack. We should be able to see, now that they are in-game, anyway. The alternate art cards, but perhaps I'm wrong. I don't see Leaf Lurker here. Though, those are promotional. Maybe we just go to all sets. Because I don't see the Dapper Defender there either. Let's see if we can pull them up, just because I kind of want to see. I don't think they're going to show up in my collection because I think you have to own them. Like, it's not obviously something that I can craft. So, little bit of a bummer. I kind of wanted to show them off. The Alduin looks gorgeous. I have seen like the GIF version of that, if you will. So, yeah, new promotion. Like I said, even if you don't care about the alternate art, I'm going to get it just because of that. I'm a sucker for it. But even if you don't care, the packs are also entirely a deal. So, you got a bundle. We got balance changes. Overall, it's a good Thursday. So, as always, let me know what you think about the nerfs. Let me know how you think things are going to shake up in the meta. As always, until next time, I love you guys, and may you walk on warm sands.